Welcome to our Wayfinding Xchange podcast. I'm Alison Richings, Wayfinding Design Director, and today's episode is one I've been really looking forward to. I'm thrilled to be talking about a topic that sits right at the intersection of design, behaviour and care, and that's improving wayfinding in hospitals. Hospital wayfinding is where my career began, but they're also places where wayfinding truly matters, when people are stressed, emotional, or worried about someone they love. Even the simplest journey can feel overwhelming. I've seen that as a designer, and I've lived that myself. In a hospital, often every minute counts. Today, I'm joined by Victoria Goldenberg, a PhD researcher at Bournemouth University, whose work focuses on improving wayfinding in hospital environments. Vita's background in psychology and neuropsychology, combined with ethnographic research and eye tracking technology, gives us a powerful window into how people really experience navigation in healthcare. We'll explore what her research reveals, how eye tracking helps us to understand behaviour in the moment, and what this means for the future of hospital wayfinding. And crucially, we'll share practical takeaways for anyone designing, managing, or influencing healthcare environments. Welcome, Vita.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining me. As I said, this is a fascinating topic, and I can't wait to talk about it. What I'd really like to start with is why hospitals? What drew you to wanting to study more about hospital wayfinding specifically?
Reverse the question a little bit. I'll tell you that I was fascinated about wayfinding first, and I learned about it during my studies for neuropsychology master's degree. And those were lectures by Jan Wiener, who's one of your previous guests, and he's a lecture on wayfinding and especially the effect of aging brain and how it copes with wayfinding difficulties was fascinating for me. And my master degree project was rather lab-based and used eye tracking technology, which was in a lab on a computer, where I realized that I didn't actually see a real sort of application for the real people there and then. And also I saw how little influence I had on how people behaved, because everyone behaved in such a different way, and I was trying to count them as numbers. And when the opportunity came to study wayfinding in hospitals, and it was advertised as a PhD studentship, already selected as a hospital as an environment, and wayfinding as the topic, and ethnography is the method, I saw it all in a combination, and I thought, that's for me. And I really liked the fact that hospital as an environment is very personal. It's a place where I could really make a difference, hopefully. I was really hopeful, and I was perhaps slightly naive, but because wayfinding in hospital is such a huge topic, as I learned later. But yes, that was really attractive to me as the opportunity.
I want to just pick up on something you said that was really interesting. I mean, everything you said was really interesting, but there was an actual PhD topic there ready that somebody had put in place. They had a studentship that you could then take on.
Yes.
I don't know why. I just assumed that you had to go and knock on doors and make it happen. But somebody within the healthcare environment recognised the issues around wayfinding and wanted some real life research. Did that come from a specific hospital trust?
Yes, sort of. It came from my supervisors who joined together and decided that this is a topic that could be well researched in a real environment, and they approached NHS Trust, the local trust in Bournemouth area. So my studentship was much funded between the NHS Trust and the university. In this particular instance, my PhD was all set, and the research question pretty much advertised in advance, rather than me trying to figure out what I would like to do, which worked really well for me because there were so many things I would possibly like to do. So already picking one off the shelf was actually a better choice for me.
Yeah, definitely. And the fact that you'd already become really interested in wayfinding, it just sort of makes perfect sense. Obviously, because I started wayfinding in hospital environments, and I've probably done wayfinding in, I don't know, 40 odd hospitals. It never ceases to amaze me how people find their way in those environments, and that, I started doing wayfinding 26 years ago, that some of the mistakes that you found 25 years ago still happen in those environments as well, which is really interesting.
Yes.
I want to know, and I mean, you probably can't tell me in entirety because it was probably quite complex, but what was the question or the statement that was posed that you were going off to research?
Yes, my research question was to explore people's attitudes, experiences, and strategies of wayfinding in a real-world hospital environment. And that is exactly what we did. Yes, and found a lot of those.
Yeah,
Yes,
I can imagine. So what was the methodology that you used?
So our methodology is called cognitive ethnography.
Yep.
Basically, I used classic ethnographic methods, which is participant observation.
Spying.
Spying. I am the participant. I am a visitor in the hospital. I'm participating in this wayfinding process. I went from being completely new to the hospital to being very much at home and almost feeling like one of the employees or a volunteer that guides people. Also, I've done informal interviews, obviously, while I was observing others. I chatted to people informally, and I did formal sit-down recorded interviews with staff, visitors, and volunteers. And also, I've performed 2 different case studies at 2 hospitals where I was doing my research, at Bournemouth Hospital and Poole Hospital.
So the people that were coming in that you were watching and observing had no idea they were participating in a study. They were just people coming into the hospital because they had an appointment or they were visiting somebody. And I think that's probably quite an important part of the research, because it's a very different set of observations if somebody is being told you're going to come to this place and you're going to act like someone than it is if you are that actual person.
Yes, absolutely. It might sound a little bit iffy when you just say, I was spying on people. So I just need to reassure the listeners that it was all ethically approved by the NHS Ethics Committee. They were very thorough.
Yeah.
It was a very lengthy process. So we made sure that all my observations are completely anonymous. I was not interfering with any clinical processes, and all my observations were also kept in the public areas. So corridors, waiting areas. I was not stepping into any clinical rooms or consultants' rooms or anything like that. So I was literally doing activities that any other member of the public could be doing if they were themselves in a hospital. With only difference, I was also taking some very well anonymized notes.
Yeah, the participants were not...
They were not aware.
They were not aware, they were not paid, they were not told to come in. These were just people going about their lives.
Yes.
Because if you're going to really understand the strategies and how people behave in spaces, you've got to get them to behave how they would behave in that space, not how they think you think they might behave in that space.
Absolutely. And I have a little anecdote from my research, very true anecdote about exactly that. So I was researching realistic natural behaviour of people in hospital, and that's very important for me because we have tons of research from the lab, but we want to see what people do in the real world.
Yeah.
And obviously with my case studies, I did invite 10 participants into each hospital, and I did have to ask them, can you go from where we are now to this department, please? And can you also wear this very inconspicuous eye-tracking glasses set that we have to calibrate? And you have a wire dangling and a phone in your pocket, which they were aware of. And so many of them then told me interview afterwards that, I wasn't sure if I was allowed to ask for directions. I wasn't sure I was allowed to do this or that, or what I was meant to be doing. Was I allowed to use stairs, or was I meant to use only the lift, as it said on a piece of paper? And which was really funny, because in the blurb, or in my introduction to that task, I was telling them, please do what you normally do when you are in the hospital. And when they heard that back, it's like, oh my God, you even said do what I'm normally doing, and and I didn't. I was all wound up. I was trying to do my best and be really good for this research. So I give you good data, and I'm thinking that's actually the opposite
of what you need. Exactly.
In a funny
way. That's what we do as people. We want to give you what you need, and therefore you start second guessing yourself.
Yes.
Whereas if you are just wandering around doing your thing, you're not second guessing yourself.
Absolutely. Luckily, the amount of data I collected from those case studies was so enormous that I could pick out the snippets where I'm pretty sure the behaviour was pretty natural, especially when there was questioning or confusion. That was what I've observed anyway.
What does eye tracking methodology show us that we wouldn't get from other methods?
So what I used it, let's say, as a glorified video recorder.
Yes.
But it did have this very useful layer of recording where the person looked at. And what we did use this recording is immediately after they reached their destination. I said, well done. We take the glasses off, and then we find a quiet corner and we watched back the recording. And then I asked my participants to narrate to me what their thinking processes were.
Yeah.
And that's where it was really helpful for them to see what they were doing and where they were looking. And what we both discovered is that they were surprised to see that they were looking at some objects that they would be saying, oh, I'm coming up to this signage on the left, but I didn't really look at it. And then a couple of seconds later, what the video shows is that they don't only look at it, they turn their head, they stop, they read, and they carry on. It's like, oh no, I did look at it. Or someone was saying, well, I realized that those blue signs over the door, they were not really useful because they just told me about car parks and toilets, and I needed a clinical destination. So I sort of ignored them. And then what they see is that they look at every subsequent blue sign over the double doors in a long corridor, and they go, but why? Why am I looking at those? I've discarded them as useless, and I'm still looking. That really surprised me, they told me. And basically this confirms this very broad ethnographic principle that we see in people, is that what people say, what people do, and what people say they do are all three different things.
I mean, just in general, that's fascinating. Exactly. Because, you then think that if you took that to its broadest sense, nothing is reliable in a court of law, is it? Do you know what I mean?
Sort of. In a way. But yes, that was surprising both for them and me. And what else we saw is that the confirmation of our story of our lives isn't that the signage needs to be shortened to the point, and not too few so that you're lost, but not too many so that you're overwhelmed. Because what we saw with all our participants is that everything that's printed, they will read it. If it's a sign, if it's a poster, if it's a pop-up ad, there's quite a lot of the written material that you come across, and their eyes will land on that. And because there is so much of this printed information, and they read it on the go, they end up skim reading.
Yes.
And a couple of times what this resulted, so two of my participants walked into a completely wrong department, quickly assuming, having skim read the sign, that this might be the place where they need to go, and they go in.
So it's our cognitive abilities, the way that we predict the world, the way that we read the world. It's not always the wayfinding itself that's wrong.
Exactly.
So I guess that brings into focus how we fix that. And I think it's just as you said, is that thing around less clutter, more clarity, less of it, but finding the right balance. And I imagine that hospitals are the places where the balance is quite heavily lost.
And it's possibly whether we can blame hospitals.
Yeah, let's blame them. No, I'm joking.
We know hospitals are massive and they have to house so many different agencies and functions and departments and catering and deliveries and clinical and whatnot. And it all has to somehow fit into the same building and somehow be found by different users, both clinical, patients and visitors, and delivery people and ambulance people and police and fire departments. And you need to be able to go forward as well as back to the exit in equally successful.
Yeah.
It's a lot to ask from a building that's not just one corridor. It's many corridors and levels and buildings. So.
And I guess there's also something about our stress levels in all of that as well.
Absolutely.
Because, it's probably a bit different if a hospital is a shopping centre and your task was to, well, I don't know, for some people that would be really stressful going into a shopping centre and buying something. But compared to I've got a letter that's got lots of medical information that I don't understand and I have to find this place and I've got to be there at a particular time and it's my health appointment.
Absolutely.
It's a different world that people are navigating. And so our stress and feelings get in the way of all of that
already
too.
Base level of stress is higher than normal even before you enter that hospital.
Yeah, definitely. I think that also does lead into the quality of the interior space. And I don't necessarily mean that from a let's get Kelly hopping in and put some plants around. I mean the quality of the space, how easy it is to see vistas, how many turns there are in the corridors, how well lit, how human it feels. Was there any sense that the robustness of the interior had an impact on your research?
Oh, absolutely. I can think of, for example, Bournemouth Hospital, which has famously long corridors. It has the major layout of the main hospital until very recently was 2 long corridors that formed an L shape. So that's the hospital I was researching. It has changed now. There's a new huge building that's been commissioned last year and it's opened now. But where I was is 2 long corridors. For example, West Wing Corridor, as it was called, I was told is about 230 meters long.
Wow.
And it's a long corridor that you can't see the end of.
Yeah.
And it has multiple double doors that are fire doors, which would periodically close when the fire system was tested. And this sort of repetition of segment door made it very repetitive. Yeah. And without any other landmarks or public art or anything else to sort of base your route descriptions or directions on, the staff and volunteers ended up saying a lot halfway down the corridor, on your right, on the left, halfway, quarter way down the corridor. But how long is a piece of string?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you can't see the end of the corridor. Yeah. And of course, the hospitals are limited in their decorative choices because they have to be clinical, they have to be cleanable.
Yes.
And they have to be sterilizable and all that sort of stuff. So we can't, as you say, we can't just employ a celebrity designer and make it into some sort of gallery. It still needs to remain a hospital, but it can be more homely. And I suppose what Bournemouth Hospital does is there are multiple courtyard gardens, which are all slightly different. So that makes the corridor nice and light, and it does give you something to look at. Once you know the hospital a little bit, you can find those pleasant corners where you can just step away from the clinical and the clean and the samey and repeated design, and to rest your eye on something organic and pleasant.
So do you think, because I mean, a lot of the older hospitals were built as individual buildings, and then there was a point where everybody said, oh, if we made it one corridor, that ran through all of the buildings and concealed that corridor in, at least your wayfinding was down one corridor. Do you actually think, in a way, that doesn't sort of help? Because at least if you moved from one building to the next, you would get a sense of landmark and progression.
Possibly in a non-hospital environment, that would be helpful. I think in the hospital, it's very useful to have that corridor, to have the links between the departments. For example, if it's raining or if it's weather, if you're weather dependent, or you need to wheel someone and you need that even flooring surface, then it's very useful to have that long corridor that links different departments. And Bournemouth Hospital is pretty much designed like that from the start, where multiple departments on either side of the corridor are linked by this long corridor in one wing and the other wing. Yet people manage to get confused. It's not something that the visitor comes in and gets told straight away. Treat this hospital like a large letter L and you'll be fine. Luckily, there are very helpful volunteers.
Volunteers are the greatest in hospital environments because they really care about guiding people. They're trained in guiding people. And they're also a really good source of information for other staff teams if they want to know how good or bad the wayfinding is, because the volunteers know, because they hear it all. That you just need to like listen to what they have to say, because they're the ones that will be asked 100 times for the same thing every day.
They were my main informants.
Yes.
And my crowd.
Yeah, definitely.
Was hanging out with them. They were the ones telling me which locations and destinations were interesting and difficult to find. So they were giving me tasks basically. Oh, have you been there? Have you found that department? Have you found the breast screening unit? I'm like, oh, okay, let's go and find it.
Yeah, and I bet it's tucked away.
It was, yes. It was difficult to find, and the receptionist, who had been employed for just under a year, created step-by-step instructions, printed them on little pieces of paper, and gave them to every patient that came for an appointment at breast screening unit. And I just duplicated those instructions and also gave my participants the instructions to see how they cope with them.
And did they? Was it better with or without the instructions?
Well, I didn't, as we discussed it, my research was ethnography rather than comparative studies. So I basically replicated the naturally occurring situation rather than creating another group to compare. Perhaps if I go on with my research, I could do another set of another study, another case study to follow up and compare other various methods of people trying to find it without those printed instructions. But because those were found and they were endogenously made by someone who's familiar with the hospital, and he was trying to, someone who's employed was trying to make this easier for the visitor. That was really interesting for me to find and to use that to further explore that sort of route.
We found it a lot in hospitals that people would stick bits of paper up on the wall, blue tack, and just, try to help. I sort of fear that a lot of that becomes more visual clutter, and often then, if you're already overwhelmed, becomes more of the problem than the solution. So words are really important when you're instructing people. It's really as important as the design. Did this come out in the research? What a sign said, what a department was called. Did anything come out about that?
Absolutely. With my Bournemouth Hospital case study, there was a concrete example of my participant walking into an orthodontics department instead of orthopedic outpatient. That's where I was sending them. And that's one of the instances where they saw the ortho, and it was on the right, halfway down the corridor on the right, as I instructed them. And they saw something similar to where they needed to be, and it was on the right, so they confidently strode in, and then lost their confidence within the next 20, 30 seconds, as they did not see any other sign for orthopedics, and they had to backtrack and come back to the corridor. Or another patient who saw main outpatients, and because I was sending them to orthopedic outpatients, they also thought, well, outpatients must be all in the same place, and perhaps within the outpatients I will see orthopedics. So they also went into a different department where I didn't really send them to.
Yeah.
And again, they looked for signage to confirm they were going in the right direction. Of course, they weren't, so they had to backtrack. And interesting, there were receptionists who were asking, are you okay? Are you lost? Do you need help? And that participant was saying, no, thank you. I'm a wayfinding participant, please. I need to do this by myself. But it's okay. So as you can see, not only they got a little bit disoriented, but also a great example of how aware they were that they are not a visitor of a hospital, but they are very responsible participant who needs to do this on their own and can't accept any other help. And I would have been happy for them to ask for directions, because that's the one thing I found about wayfinding in the hospital. It's very social.
Yes. Well, I mean, in a way that does kind of lead on to some of the lessons that were learned, which is the really exciting thing. What's the key impact of poor wayfinding that often gets overlooked, particularly by decision makers?
Well, what we can tell the decision makers is that, unfortunately, we cannot predict all the difficulties and kinks in the system in advance as we design it. What we see in those handwritten blue-tacked signs and all those printed step-by-step instructions is that as you start using the system, then you will find out how to use it best, where it doesn't really work. And that's those stick-on signs are the telltale signs that this is the exact place where people repeatedly obviously got disorientated. So someone with a kind heart decided to help them out.
Yeah.
And what that tells us is that there needs to be some sort of trial stage, perhaps, of the system. But also, what we need to realize that when we're talking about a hospital wayfinding system, it's never going to be static.
Yes.
Because even as I was there doing my observations, I could see that there were some units or departments that were migrating around the hospital because of some building works, or there were some clinics that were migrating because of the availability of the space. There were things being renamed, there were things being shifted and moved, and there was another massive building being built at Bournemouth Hospital. So that's like a very obvious expansion and development in the wayfinding system. You need to now learn that the main hospital entrance is not here, but it's all the way across the other side of the site of the hospital. The wayfinding system in a hospital will always change and merge, and it will need updating and maintenance.
Yes.
And that's where we need to bite the bullet and admit it to ourselves and have a person who will maintain that wayfinding system like a nice garden that keeps growing and needs trimming and weeding.
Yes. I mean, that is so right. The fact that probably 2 minutes within putting a sign up, it's out of date potentially. And of course, what happens is that we were always asked years ago to put in slat systems so that things could be changed, but then it was never maintained anyway, so nothing did ever change. But I loved what you said about testing, because testing never ends, because the hospital environment never stays static either.
No.
Like you say, you've got wards and departments migrating all the time. You've got new bits being built. You've got old bits being closed down. You know, you've got entrances that may move, and then you've got the on the day, oh, we can't use this clinic today, we're going to go there instead. And I think that testing often gets left out of wayfinding projects. And there are very few people who come back and say, the system has been in for a year now, can we test it again? Because we've changed things. And I also think that the most successful hospitals that we've worked with have been ones where there's been somebody who is the wayfinding person in that hospital. And every time there's a capital project, there's a budget for wayfinding, and that person is brought in, because at least then it's operationally a part of the system. That does make a difference. So I think that's really important. I mean, I remember one day many millions of years ago, I went into a hospital and we were having a consultation meeting, and one of the members of staff, the quite senior clinical staff, she came in and she sat down and she literally put her head in her hands and was sort of slightly upset. And one of the other people in there who knew her very well said to her, "Are you okay?" And she said, "I've just come from a meeting where we've decided that we can't afford to buy this particular diagnostic equipment, which," she said, "would save people's lives. And now I'm talking about signs." And I did say to her, we can save money if we can get people to their appointments on time and they don't miss them. That's at least something fundamental.
Yes.
But I wanted to ask about whether you had any learnings around the impact of efficiency, workload, or trust that came up as part of it, that strengthens that argument. Because, you know, yes, a piece of diagnostics is really, really important, but getting people to that piece of diagnostics is just as important.
Absolutely. Yes, the patient trust does suffer if the signage is not updated, or if their clinic moves from appointment to appointment and they can't really even trust their appointment letter to follow the instructions there because they don't match anymore. So one of my participants admitted just asking for directions every time from a volunteer or receptionist.
Yeah.
And that leads me to the workload. So I wasn't researching, obviously, workload as such. What I did see is that there is very different impact on different people. And I'll explain. So I've spoken to various receptionists. So there were general reception at the entrance, and they were super happy to give directions. They would be really happy to come out of their glass enclosure and lead the patient slightly onto the right track, and then where they can just simply point and say, just carry on there. And that's part of their daily job, is to receive patients, check them in, show them where to go. Another reception that was a pre-admissions assessment unit. Again, they are receptionists, but those receptionists also had what looked like to me a mountain of tasks that were paperwork. They were ferociously typing up notes. They were checking in and signing in their patients for the actual pre-assessment appointment. And for them, the interruption of, where is the outpatients? They told me, unfortunately, they didn't come up for a full interview, but they told me informally during my observations. It's like, oh my God, we get interrupted all the time.
Yeah.
And those receptionists obviously were suffering from very frequent interruptions about something quite trivial, where what those patients were asking them most of the time was around the corner. They just had to lift their eyes and see the sign and carry on walking. But because those receptionists were on their way to where they were going, they felt like they could just ask a question, because it only takes a couple of seconds, doesn't it? But for that receptionist who was deeply into typing something, some patient information probably, they might make mistakes. They did look slightly annoyed, if I'm honest, because naturally they're trying to get on with their daily work.
Yeah, I think it's quite natural for people to turn to people. And I guess I go back to what you said earlier about wayfinding being social and in hospital environments. I guess if you lose trust in the system as well, so you can't even look at your appointment letter and believe what it says, you're going to turn to people.
Absolutely.
And I guess that social element, you know, in some respects, no matter how good the wayfinding is or isn't, some people will always ask people.
Yes. When I spoke to other people in clinical positions, they always were very positive about giving directions, especially because obviously once they're in their room, in their consultant room, they're not bothered with directions because they're behind the closed doors. But as they're going to or from their place of work, they're very happy to direct as they pick up patients on the way being disorientated. They go, oh, I see that look. I know that look when they're a little bit lost. I just approached them. I'm very happy to help them because someone was saying, because I'm fairly new to the hospital myself and I understand how difficult it may be to get your head around the signage system, how it works and where to go. And they were always happy to help and talked about that feeling of gratification from that little time they spend helping someone find their way, and they feel like they've done something extra on the day. And that's exactly the feeling I was really happy to experience as a researcher. As I learned the hospitals quite well during my research, I was also very happy to do those bits of helpfulness to the lost patients. They would be ever so grateful and I would feel ever so good about myself. So that's that moment. And I think we can't completely eradicate the social.
And we don't want to either.
We don't want to, because it's a give and take.
And I think it's about everything working in combination, isn't it, really?
Yes. Quite a few times volunteers, they told me, you know, sometimes you direct these patients and they ask you how do I get to patients, for example, and before you start telling them, you know, it's over there to the right, take the lift to the floor 0, and before you finish the sentence, they're off. They're off. There's no thank you. There's no they don't stay there. They're just too determined to just get this over with and be done with it. And that's what I observed actually happen in the interaction between the volunteers and patients. And that's what I experienced in my case studies as I was telling my participants to go somewhere. And I would have a couple of sentences written on my piece of paper, and I would tell them the name of the department, and a couple of them would already take a step forward. They're ready. They get up. They're ready to go. And because I keep droning on, you know, if you feel like when on the way to the department, please feel free to do whatever you normally do. They go, yeah, and I can see they're already scanning the signage, scanning. They're already wayfinding.
Yeah.
They don't care what I'm going to see them at the entrance to the to that department by the map, whatever map. They didn't hear that.
Yes.
And sometimes we would meet at the end of their route, and they go, I forgot what you said where we're going to meet, but this is the department, isn't it? So, yeah, that's fine, all good, we've met up. So that is how, I'm not sure why people are so determined to just get on with it and get it done. But that's something about wayfinding that absolutely has to be efficient, fast, quick, furious, and we need to get going as soon as we know where we're going, rather than stop, plan. There was one person out of 20 people from my 2 case studies who actually stopped by a hospital map. She planned it all. She chunked it into 4 chunks and then found a staircase B or C that she needed to find just before the destination, and that's what she was looking out for. And she was sort of walking and counting those chunks that she devised herself, and of course she got there, no problems. And slow at the start, really happy at the end.
It's the hare and the tortoise.
Yes.
So maybe there is something psychologically in our need to have something finished that pushes us into this. It feels almost like it's a race or kind of strange way of behaving. You wouldn't sit in with the doctor and go, right, I'm not really listening to you because I'm off. There's something to do with the mindset we get ourselves in when we're doing something transitional.
who knows? Maybe because wayfinding is so ubiquitous. We do it every single day. We go to the shop, we go to work, to school, go to a concert, we go to our friends, and we do it every day. So we're really confident in it. So why can't we do it very confidently in the other place that we visit?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I want to just hit the ground running, and it doesn't happen because I forget that in a new place I need to stop, look, plan a little bit. Ask for directions, please. You're welcome to do that, absolutely. Well, especially if you see a correct person to do that, to ask, and you'll be great. So it's setting those expectations, perhaps. Setting the correct expectations is probably quite important.
Yeah, definitely. Expectations. I think there is something in that, and something in our psychology. So what does successful wayfinding actually look like in a hospital setting then?
So what I think successful wayfinding is someone who takes their time, reads their signage carefully, and gets to their destination without having to backtrack themselves or getting flustered.
Yeah.
And probably to someone else that would look like slow and boring. But possibly. But to me, that looks successful.
Yeah.
And that means possibly stopping for a second and reading that sign, or even asking someone for a quick reassurance. Am I on the right direction, on the right path to X-ray, for example? And they go, yeah, sure, carry on going. And that conversation takes 5-10 seconds, doesn't really interrupt the person in the corridor for too long. And you carry on walking, reassured that you're on the right path. And that for me is successful wayfinding. And what I realize people don't want to accept is that wayfinding takes mental effort.
Yes.
And you don't have any other choice but to actually apply that mental effort to do it. And there won't be ever a wayfinding system that requires zero mental effort whatsoever. Even if it's very simple, you still need to realize, oh, it's simple, and this is my plan.
I think that's really interesting because we often blame the system and say the system's wrong because people are getting lost. But actually, what you're saying is that we're overwhelmed, we're potentially late, we're in an unfamiliar environment that's different to all the other environments we're normally in. We may be older, which means that we might have issues, and that we're not giving wayfinding the attention it deserves because our brains are going off in a million other ways.
Yes.
So maybe some of the problem is us. So do we need to change all of the reception areas as you walk into a hospital to be the most calming spaces in the world ever, with beautiful bird song that forces you to go to try and put you in the mindset where you will successfully read it? Or do we just have to accept that it's a bit chaotic?
Yes, it's a very good question and idea whether you can be calmed by anything in the hospital.
Yeah, by
because
some external
it's still a hospital.
Exactly. And your stress is going to ramp up again. But maybe if there's a way of making everybody go, at one point, maybe they might take on board the information a bit more. I mean, I find that most of the places that we work in, it is always the system at fault and it is never us. And what you're saying is your research showed that if we were a bit slower and a bit calmer, it just wouldn't be so bad. That's completely fascinating.
Exactly.
What are the big takeaways for the NHS then?
What is the main takeaway? Is obviously what we spoke about, is to understand that wayfinding system in the hospital is dynamic.
Yes.
It's endogenously produced as well as it's being used. People who use it will use it in their own way, and they will try and adapt it to how they use it. And they'll show it to you by sticking those handwritten signs everywhere, which you just go around look at those signs and think, right, this is the place where something needs to be done officially, and remove the clutter.
Yeah.
And for that to happen, there needs to be that person whose job description clearly says wayfinding maintenance.
Yeah.
And then there won't be any questions, whose job is this to remove those old signs, or whose job is this to update this. For example, when I was speaking to my friends, volunteers, guiding volunteers, if they find something that's not quite working, who do they talk to?
Yes.
And I was like, we used to speak to this lovely lady there, but then she's on maternity, so we tried to speak to someone else, but they were not very interested. So we sometimes reported, sometimes not. Sometimes we tell the receptionist that we've discovered something, and that's that. And there's no specific person that they can confide in that will listen, that will act on it, and who actually has the funds and the access to actually act upon all those requests and all those changes that need integrating into the system.
I think it's that level of authority, isn't it?
Yes, it's
that
not.
They can
it's
make
not,
change.
Absolutely, it can't be some entry level employee at the estate
that has no authority and no budget,
that will collect all the problems and will have no ability to actually do anything with them. That will be soul destroying.
Yeah, it's like the worst thankless task.
Yeah, it will have to be quite a high flying person who will be very with it, and probably keep in touch with the research, with people like me and you, be interested in it, and be have wayfinding in their own hospital as their own interest as well.
Yeah, definitely. Is it possible to design wayfinding in a way that actively reduces stress?
Actively reduces in the hospital? No.
No.
It's because the stress will be there.
It'll always be
whether
there.
It's your own stress, or whether, like it happened with one of my participants who walked past. It was a discharge lounge.
Yeah.
And if you
Which
know,
I have
a
to
discharge
say,
lounge...
It's the worst name in the world
Not a
ever.
glorious name, no. Absolutely not. Or departure lounge.
Yeah, we're not in an airport.
Where are you departing to?
Yeah,
hopefully not.
No. But I still would prefer departure lounge to discharge lounge.
So departure lounge, let's say, my participant was walking past, and this departure lounge was right next to blood tests.
Yeah.
And he noticed the blood tests sign, but not the departure lounge sign. And he was looking there, and he commented, "Ugh, needles! People giving blood. Don't like needles. Don't like blood." And he expected to see something that wasn't even there.
Yeah.
And he got a little bit icky and stressed.
Yeah.
That wasn't even his own appointment related, or like research related.
Yeah. And every one of us have different stress points and different things that make us feel in a hospital.
It's a hospital. You see other people, and they come to the hospital with their problems and illnesses.
Yeah.
And there's going to be hospital smell and all other trigger points.
Yes.
So wayfinding, I'm afraid, won't fix it, because it's a thing that will, if anything, put more sort of strain on your brain, because you need to keep reading and perceiving that information. Do I go left or right here? Is it green on blue? I'm following. But we can't but try to make it as straightforward and intuitive as possible.
So should we just have an army of people that stand at reception and take everybody that comes into the hospital to where they need to go?
Yeah, that would be ideal,
it would,
of course.
Wouldn't it?
If you ever been to a private hospital,
that's how they do it.
There's minimal signage, and there's a nurse who takes you by the hand, and you don't even have to think about where you're going and if it's left or right or up and down.
Yeah.
But of course, in a large NHS hospital,
I was going to say
an
800-bed hospital. I'm not sure we're going to make that happen. But
if we can't have an army of people, we spend that money instead of hiring an army of people, of hiring an army of wayfinders.
Exactly, a much smaller army of wayfinders
to set it up, and then just keep one to maintain it.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And then the last thing I wanted to ask about, which everybody talks about, digital. How do you see digital tools playing its part in wayfinding? Because, we have people from hospital environments talking about digital wayfinding. Obviously, even yesterday, the new Samsung glasses got leaked to the press. So they're doing the whole Meta glasses thing where...
augmented reality.
Yeah. So...
Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the fear of it going wrong, maintenance issues, cost issues?
Yes.
You know,
all there.
All of that still there.
Of course.
But you would actually quite embrace it if a hospital.
Yes. No one is insured against the hiccups and the problems and Wi-Fi going down or whatever the connecting system they would be using, or Bluetooth or whatever. But again, signage goes out of date.
Yes.
Your map's orientated backwards and people don't use it and get disorientated. So even your old school stuff can go wrong. The biggest, obviously, issue, especially for NHS with digital, is that it's pricey.
Yes.
To start with. If it's set up and there's budget for it and it's working, again, it will need maintenance, digital updates and everything. But it would be great. So digital system of signage with liquid ink signs that can be updated, like your price tags in supermarkets. Yeah,
because you do think, well, you know, supermarkets do it with price tags. There are lots of environments that are using different ways successfally that you think, could we find a way of applying that in other places, such as hospitals?
In my opinion, a digitalized signage system would be great, because then you could update it whenever almost on a daily basis from one single computer, and the whole of the system would get updated rather than one sign, and you would forget about a sign around the corner that leads people astray. And augmented reality, why not? That's amazing. Can we have a bucket of augmented reality glasses that people just can pick up at reception, scan a QR code to their destination and go to that? And then if they need to go from the menopause clinic to take a blood test, which often happens, they scan another code and walk through the hospital in a different direction. That was picked up as another problem, is how do you... so from entrance to one destination, great. How about from one department to another?
Yeah.
That's not always very obvious. So that the sky's the limit with digital, of course.
Yeah.
Why not make it work for us? And the population is there that would use it. Those people who are digitally savvy, they will be very happy to use digital technology rather than to interrupt some clinical stuff they might see in the corridor. So there are people, many of them, who are very aware that they don't want to interrupt a person wearing clinical uniform, be it nurses, doctors, whoever. And they're very, very apologetic, and they would say, I would only interrupt them in very last case scenario. Otherwise, I'd just try and do it by myself. And they would be very happy to have extra help in their hand.
Definitely. I know I said that was the last question, but I do just want to ask you one more thing, if that's all right. What next? Because you've finished your PhD, haven't you?
Hopefully, fingers crossed, 2-3 weeks, crossing the T's and dotting the I's.
So what next for you?
You know what? A longish break.
I was going to say, you're going to say a holiday, aren't you?
Simply because I went straight into my PhD before I even properly finished my master's degree, which I took 2 years plus 3.5 years of PhD. So it's 5.5 years of just doing research. And I need to remind myself what not doing research feels like.
Yes.
And that will show me exactly what next.
Okay.
Obviously, a million of ideas and thoughts if I were to continue research. But I would do a break without a deadline after the break.
Absolutely. And I hope you enjoy that break.
Yes,
and I hope
much.
It gives you the clarity that you want.
Yes, thank you.
This has been really fascinating. I've absolutely loved it. It is a topic that's really close to my heart. As I said, I started off wayfinding in hospitals, and it is the place where you feel like you've made the biggest difference, if you can make a difference. I feel slightly sad that I can't now. Well, I think I will. I think I'm going to go to my local hospital and just stand there, and everybody that comes in just go, whoa, slow down. It's going to be okay. Slow down.
Yeah, it's going to be fine.
It's going to be all right. Slow
You'll
down.
get there.
Yeah. Just remember, wayfinding isn't easy. So just slow down. It's going to be all right.
It's not easy, but you can do it.
But you can do it. Because that feels like, that's in a way quite a revelation. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that a lot of the clients that we have completely blame the system and never think about the role that we as humans play in that. So I think that's really fascinating. And the takeaways have been really, really interesting. And I 120 million% endorse testing and having somebody in place where the wayfinding information is fed back to, and knowing that it's always out of date. And that's okay. And all we can do is keep trying.
Yes.
So thank you so much. I've absolutely loved it. Thank you.
I really enjoyed our conversation as well.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you for listening to our latest Wayfinding Xchange podcast. Stay tuned for further episodes and feel free to contact us with any questions and suggestions for future episodes.